Los Angeles County, California is one of the last places in the entire country to have an eviction moratorium. And one day after the eviction moratorium ended, landlords immediately started filing evictions against tenants. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over what happened after the end of the eviction moratorium in Los Angeles County, California. Now, obviously, as you know, as I reported, the eviction moratorium in Los Angeles County was one of the very last ones to end. And, it took over 3 years. It was absolutely ridiculous. So there were a lot of landlords who were just sitting there and waiting, just waiting until they could finally be able to file eviction against their tenants, get them up out of their properties, and do what they needed to do with them. And that is exactly what happened. That's what this story is going to be going over today. It's going to be going over one particular landlord and the tenants that they had in that property. And the reason I'm covering this story is because the landlord actually was interviewed, and he actually goes over the exact reasons why he had to get rid of these tenants and what he was planning on doing with the property. And this is pretty rare because usually in these types of stories, what you'll hear is the tenant side, and then the landlord will put out a statement like no comment, which, usually is, everyone assumes the worst. They always assume, well, this is just another greedy landlord. This is just somebody who just, is treating the tenants like crap, right? And the landlord in this story actually got an opportunity to say, hey, I had to do this, and this is exactly why. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think that the majority of landlords who are evicting tenants are bad people, or do you think that they have a really good reason to do so? Now, obviously, there's a lot of landlords who watch this channel, so we're going to think that we're good people, right? But when we're talking about the other people watching this channel, tenants or people who are homeowners who maybe have never owned a property and rented it out before, what do you think? Okay. And when you hear this story, you might still think the worst of landlords, but keep in mind, right, there's a reason for everything. And in this situation in particular, I think the reason is good. And I'm going to explain exactly why as we go through it. So, anyway, let's get into the article. This article is coming from the BurbankLeader.com, and it says, Landlords weigh in on renovation evictions. And in particular, the landlord in this case said that they were going to be evicting their tenants after the end of the Los Angeles County eviction moratorium in order to renovate the unit and then raise the rents up to market levels, right? And, looking at it from the outside, you might be saying, okay, well, this sucks, right? But, yeah, wait until they actually get to the part where they talk about what the landlord is saying. So, anyway, let's get into the article. Landlords joined in on the mass eviction conversation in Burbank this week as other cities also grapple with the issue. In the city of South Pasadena, passing an eviction moratorium to stop the trend that has spiked in recent months since the end of the countywide eviction moratorium. At a time when Burbank is expanding on legislation that would streamline new affordable housing developments, the available pool of existing affordable housing in town is diminishing. Just one day after the Los Angeles County eviction moratorium expired on March 31st, Emmanuel Perez and Sandra Verona received a 60-day notice to vacate their Burbank apartment. They didn't know that they would join dozens of other Burbankers in being displaced from their homes, forced to search for comparable accommodations miles from the city. Yeah, and the issue that they're having here is that one day after the eviction moratorium ended, their landlord decided to evict them, right? And that means that that's a clear indication that the landlord had been planning on evicting them for quite a while before the end of the eviction moratorium, but had to wait until they were legally allowed to do so. Okay, so they're already talking about how some of the cities and municipalities within the county of Los Angeles are trying to pass even more eviction protections to keep landlords from being able to do this stuff, right? But the only thing they're doing is delaying the inevitable. Okay, these landlords need to get rid of these tenants for specific reasons. And the reasons are laid out in the article, which is, it's a first because usually I'm sitting here and I'm left speculating why exactly, or what the intentions of the landlord are. And after reading this, I'm pretty accurate in terms of why I suspect that this landlord is going through the eviction process with these tenants. The couple lives in a compact two-bedroom apartment in a dingbat-style building a few blocks from downtown Burbank. The couple said that they were good tenants, but they weren't surprised when they found the notice taped to their door. Landlord and real estate investor Massis Kodavarian, excuse me on that name, I'm not great with that name pronunciation on anyone, told the leader he has wanted the tenants out for months. He had purchased the 10-unit building in 2021 and raised rent 16% since then, but still felt that the $1,900 the couple was paying for their unit was too low. Under LA County law, landlords are limited to an 8% annual rent increase. Increasing rent after a property is vacated, meanwhile, is not regulated. Codaverdian said he plans to relist the unit somewhere between $2,400 and $2,800 a month after Perez and Verona vacate. So now we're getting to the first aspects of why this landlord was, trying to get rid of these tenants, right? Basically, these tenants were paying far below the market level rents. Okay, the market level rents for this unit are between $2,400 and $2,800 per month. And these tenants, even after a 16% rent increase, were over 2 years, mind you. Okay, don't think that 16% rent increase was over 1 year. That was over a 2 year period. The landlord was allowed to raise the rent 16%. Okay, due to their rent control within Los Angeles County. But anyway, even then, after those rent increases, the rent is only $1,900 a month, which is between $500 and $900 a month less than what the market rates are. So this landlord, he could possibly be losing money every single month that he's renting this unit to this couple, okay? And he has to raise those rents up, has to, because he purchased this property in 2021, and probably like most landlords, when we purchase a property and the rents are far below market, well, we have to raise the rents up to the market level in order to cover all of our expenses, because we pay a much higher rate, or we paid a much higher amount for the property than the previous owner did. So the previous owner, I don't know how long they owned it, but just to give you an example of a property that I bought, right? I purchased a fourplex in Phoenix, Arizona, and the original person that I purchased the property from, and they bought it right after the recession, and they only paid $125,000. So I paid $179,000. So keeping that in mind, right, I paid over 50 grand more than the person I purchased it from, right? So I pay higher property. I paid higher mortgage expenses. I paid, I have a different insurance company, so I'm paying higher insurance. I had a higher property tax bill. My property management might have been more expensive than the person who was managing it themselves. So my expenses are much more than the person who owned it before me. So I had to raise the rents on the tenants the second I bought that property in order to cover the higher expenses. And this is understandable if you understand business. Now, this isn't saying that, hey, this is a great thing for the tenants. No, but I think that people should understand that landlords, we charge a certain amount because we have to. And in a place where you have a rent control policy in place that says, hey, you can only raise the rents by 8% per year, well, the landlord never has the opportunity with those tenants to raise the rent up to the market rate. It would take them years on end, and they would never reach the amount that the market is charging. So in an ideal market, what the landlord would be able to do is say, okay, I don't have to evict this tenant. I'm just going to charge this tenant the $2,400 or $2,800 a month that this unit is actually worth, right? The tenant can then make the decision whether they want to leave or they're willing to pay that extra amount to stay in this unit. Okay, and then the tenant, maybe the tenant gets in there, they're paying $2,400 a month, they don't have to move, they don't have any issues. Yes, they are paying a higher amount, but that's not a problem. But they basically, by having a rent control policy in place, have forced the landlord's hand where they have to evict the tenant in order to get the rents up to market rates. The tenant isn't even given the option. They don't even have the option of paying that higher amount, because it is illegal, according to the law, to charge the tenant the higher rent amount. See, there are unintended consequences when you have these rent control policies in place. And it's an unfortunate thing, but man, I mean, what do you expect the landlord to do? Okay, they have to look out for their own best interest. And remember, they purchased this property with the intention of making money. They did not purchase this property in order to run a charity and provide below market rents to everybody who is poor and needy and be their social service provider or their homeless shelter. Nobody in their right mind would purchase a property and then do that. Okay, so anyway, let's continue. When a tenant's rent is low, the value of the building is directly attached to the income that the building generates. So when it comes to refinancing or selling the property, their property is not worth as much as the other comparable ones. So business wise, it doesn't make sense whatsoever for any landlord to keep tenants that are paying below the market value, Codavarian said. Okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. I mean, obviously, he's the landlord. But most of the time, you don't say this stuff. We don't read this stuff in these sort of articles. These articles are very pro tenant, they're very anti landlord. And he's saying, hey, from a business perspective, right, our properties are valued based upon the rental income. All of us as landlords, we know this. We know this. This is something that we, base our entire business and investment strategy on. But the general public, they don't know this. They think, oh, well, you can just go down to the bank and no, the bank won't give you a loan. You won't be able to sell the property for, anything. You'll lose money. Okay. You will literally lose money. And no landlord is a charity. Okay. I just said that. We're not charities. We're not going to do this unless we're making money. So basically what this comes down to is we have tenants in a property. They're paying far below the market level of rent. He is raising the rents up to the market level so that his building will be able to increase in value. Okay, that is the whole purpose of him buying the building in the first place, was so that he can increase the value of the property and either refinance it or sell it. Okay, I know this because this is exactly what I do. And because these rent control laws are in place, he cannot raise the rent on these tenants enough in order to, increase the value. So he has to go through whatever means necessary in order to do that, which is he has to evict these tenants. And he's doing it by rehabbing the property, right? And that's what this whole article is about. They think it's not fair that landlords are able to remove tenants so that they can rehab the property, bring the units up to modern standards and then rent them out at a higher price. What they want is they want the landlords to spend tens of thousands of dollars remodeling a property and then put a tenant in there and pay the exact same below market rent that they were paying before. You know how dumb that sounds? Nobody would do that. Nobody. So if they're trying to make laws now that say, oh well, landlords can't do that, right? And you know what the result's going to be? Landlords are not going to rehab properties. They're just going to be dilapidated, falling apart, and it will actually function as a deterrent for anyone to invest in the city or build new properties on top of that. So yeah, their solution to all this affordable housing stuff is more regulations, more laws, taking property rights away from landlords, punishing us, and they really are just punishing themselves.